The roadmap for Democrats to take back the Senate has narrowed, with Susan Collins winning in Maine and Thom Tillis closer to victory in North Carolina. But there still remains the possibility of a blue takeover, with one tightening race in Georgia. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes joins me now to discuss. Hi, Nancy. So the race in Georgia is getting tighter and tighter between David Perdue and Jon Ossoff. Is it now in runoff territory? What's the latest?
It has just crossed over into runoff territory, Tanya. Now, whether it will stay there remains to be seen. Remember that in Georgia, the state law says that if a candidate, the leading candidate, doesn't get over 50% in the election, then it goes to a January runoff automatically. And so if you take a look at our numbers right now, we've got David Perdue, the incumbent Republican, sitting right at 50%, and then his challenger, Jon Ossoff, at 47.7%. But if you now go to the Georgia Secretary of State website, what you will see is that actually they have Perdue sitting at 49.99%. So he is now just below that 50% threshold, and with 97% of the vote in, a lot of the outstanding votes are coming from large Democratic-leaning counties. And so the likelihood that Perdue is going to get back over that 50% threshold is shrinking. And so it does appear at this point he's going to win the race most likely. I don't see Jon Ossoff being able to make up that 2.3% lead that Perdue has. But that doesn't matter, because as long as Perdue can get to a runoff with as long as Ossoff can get to a runoff with Perdue, then it wipes the slate clean, and they are running against each other in January.
And the other race in Georgia is also on a runoff now, correct?
That's correct. So that was the special election that pitted Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed to this seat earlier last year, against 19 other candidates. It's sort of a free-for-all. It was always clear that no one was going to get to 50%, and so the top two vote getters move on to the runoff. That's her and then the Democrat, Pastor Raphael Warnock. And I was just crunching the numbers this morning, taking a look at all these 20 candidates. There were a bunch of Democrats, a bunch of Republicans, because I wanted to see, as sort of a foreshadowing of how this runoff could go in January, if you add up all the Democrats who were in the race, you add up all the Republicans who were in the race, what did those vote totals look like? So I got a handy whiteboard here. I hope you can see it. And this is what I came up with. The Republicans totaled 49.63%, and the Democrats 48.16%. So that too was a very close race. You had a few libertarians, independents, in there as well. But bottom line is that this could be an extremely close race in January as well. So it looks almost certain at this point that we are going to have to wait until these two January runoffs take place, if there are indeed two of them, to find out which party controls the Senate, and the entire political world is going to descend on Georgia over the holidays to see what happens there.
Pretty incredible. So Nancy, what can you tell us about what's going on in North Carolina?
Okay, North Carolina, very interesting as well. 94% of the vote in statewide. That really hasn't changed in about 18 hours or so. We keep refreshing. We know that they're counting votes, but they just haven't posted new totals. And Thom Tillis, the incumbent Republican senator, has a 1.8-point lead over his challenger, the Democrat Cal Cunningham. He's leading 48.7 to 46.9, so about 100,000 votes separating them. Now, the reason that we haven't projected him as the winner is because they are still counting. It's the same reason that we haven't projected a winner in the presidential race. And some of the biggest, most populous counties, again, Democratic leaning, they're either in or around big cities, those are the ones that are still doing a lot of counting. So Cumberland County, for example, only 91% of the vote is in there. Forsyth County, 89%. New Hanover, 92%. The Big Kahuna, Wake County, 94%. Orange County, 82%. And so, it would be difficult for Cal Cunningham to catch up, but we don't believe it would be impossible, which is why we're not projecting a winner in this race. Tillis does have a slightly bigger lead over Cunningham than President Trump has over Joe Biden. President Trump has a 1.4 point lead, whereas Tillis has a 1.8 point lead. So he's sitting a little more comfortably in the polls there, but still, better to be safe than sorry. So we're not projecting a winner there.
Absolutely. So, Nancy, over on the House side now, Democrats are expected to keep their majority, but with a much slimmer margin, even though they did flip 2 red seats to blue. Republicans flipped 8. So much for that blue wave. And there are still over 24 races considered toss-ups. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's a big disappointment for Democrats who were so bullish on their chances going into the night. They picked up 41 seats back in 2018, and they thought they had still left some seats on the table. They thought that perhaps because President Trump's poll numbers were so poor around the country that they would be able to pull off some, maybe 6, maybe a dozen, maybe 18 House Republicans who were in suburban areas. But what we saw instead was that Republican turnout was actually boosted by the fact that President Trump was on the ballot this time around in 2020. He wasn't on the ballot in 2018. So turnout for Republicans increased, and that meant that not only were those Republicans able to hold on to their seats, but they were able to pick off some Democrats in very, very purple areas that were, sort of surprising that Democrats picked them up in the first place back in 2018, like Abby Finkenauer in Iowa's 1st district. And so it's a big disappointment for Democrats. At the same time, they had a comfortable majority going into the night. It was 232 to 197. It's now going to be a little slimmer. Maybe, that lead will be cut by 12 seats or so. And so that makes Nancy Pelosi's life a little more difficult, but they do still have the majority in the House, though there is a lot of soul searching going on right now about how they could have been so wrong about their prospects going into the night. I'll just give you one example. They were so bullish about their chances in Texas. They thought that they could flip 10 Republican seats potentially from red to blue. They didn't end up flipping any of them. So it was not the night that Democrats had hoped for in the House, and certainly their dreams of turning a state like Texas blue were dashed.
It's interesting how their expectations could be so off. All right, well, Nancy Cortez, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tanya.